I wanted to have the movement of the armies to be based on real movement. And so Terry Notary, who was doing all of our movement coaching for the actors on set all the way through the live action shoot, he played a big part along with our stunt coordinator, Glenn Boswell, who had done all the stunt work during the live action set. They came into the digital world, onto the motion capture stage. Just as the orcs had been moving or the elves had been fighting in the live action world, then they just carried on doing that with the CGI elves. And then I was able to then come in as the camera operator, and that brings the last level of the sort of the real world into it.
We spent several months really putting together mocap of different battle scenarios, large armies fighting other armies, and actually building the entire battle.
Boom, boom. It's trying to figure out the precision as well as how all the formations are going to work in harmony and unison with only 12 people. We're replicating these performers into 1,000 or thousands.
He's trying to motion capture the opening ceremony of the Olympic Games with 8 people at a time. It's hard.
There's huge number of creatures and dwarfs and orcs and elves, yet when we're on the mocap stage, we're 12 guys. 12 guys did it all.
1, 5, 6, 7, 8, go! Move! 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Action. Okay. See? These guys are suffering for their art.
No actors were actually harmed in this battle.
There's this sort of tricky aspect to the whole thing, which is you risk when you have 25,000 troops fighting with each other, you risk having the audience not be able to understand who's who. Terry and Glenn designed fundamentally different rhythms to the motion for each race.
So the movement and the sort of the choreography, if you like, of how these armies move is another weapon that you have at your disposal, if you excuse the pun.
The dwarves had a very sort of like mechanical rhythm in whatever they did.
And the dwarves are on a steady 4 count. They feel like almost like a factory traveling across the lands. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4. It's kind of like taking a dump, you know, like the dwarves are just, they just go out and they're like the wall builders. They're like the brick and mortar of the battle.
These guys were solid, they were grounded, they were rooted to the earth.
1, 2, 3, 4.
I think there's probably more to be done with them kind of forming themselves into a little tight kind of tortoise-shaped tank almost.
You've never seen them fight other than individually before, but it's just something in the DNA of dwarves that at a certain moment they just know to form this unique formation that gives them advantage for that moment in time.
With the dwarves, we wanted to kind of create that real shield wall look, where they could be running and then very quickly coalesce into this very striking, strong shield wall, which is a typical kind of Viking or Anglo-Saxon idea that you'd have literally a wall of shields being formed by the front ranks.
Possibly the Macedonian phalanx is the best known of these formations for actually stacking up half a dozen ranks with long, long spears.
And looking into historical method of you're surrounded by your strength, and as long as one person stays strong, as long as everyone's strong, then you'll triumph. And with the dwarves, that's how they work. They work as a team, they work as a unit.
The thing with dwarves is that they can be very tactical, but things aren't pristine. They're not perfect rank and file like you might see with the elves. So it was important to get variance along the line. So you have these groups of 6 to 10 that would form the shield wall, and that would have nuanced differences between each performer doing it. And then we furthered that in animation. So for example, the way that the pikes stick through the shield wall There are angle differences and just natural things that would happen in reality.
Orcs, on the other hand, are these they're like swarming schools of piranhas that breaks through walls of elves and dwarves, create a gap, and then pour through.
And the orcs, their rhythm was on 5, so it was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And it was offset to kind of give you this chaotic rhythm.
You know when a horse runs, how its head surges? It's that feel.
Good. The idea is that the orcs attack by numbers. As they would attack their enemy and their comrades would fall, they would completely disregard their dead. They would stomp on them, step on them. They find a point of weakness and they swarm it.
They don't kind of look out for each other, you know. I guess there's no real kind of preservation instinct there for their fellow soldiers. They just want to kill the goodies, really.
I find that very scary because it's sort of like the kamikaze, where it's like, I don't care, I'm going in, whether I live or die, I'm going to complete my mission.
With respect to the elves that come to the Battle of the Five Armies, you know, there's been a long history in Tolkien's writing of the elves being the dominant military fighting force within the world of Middle-earth.
We're pretty excited to depict that chance to show the elves really let loose in a sustained battle. We did very quickly go back to that prologue sequence.
One of the key things that we saw in the prologue to the Fellowship of the Ring, in the battle on the slopes of Mount Doom, we saw the elves make this very beautifully choreographed action with their swords.
When you see the Last Alliance fighting, you know, with the elves, with the line of swords scything away, you know, we really wanted to be in that zone.
The elves had this graceful type of movement where they were doing a 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3.
1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2.
Company, 1, 1. Very graceful, sort of fluid dynamic to their fighting stance.
Everything with the elves, it's very angular. Everything is made up of triangles, so a lot of trios.
And we designed some really cool stuff where you would have 2 swordsmen to every archer. So the swordsmen would work almost like whirling dervishes, and they would protect their archer. And they would all move as sort of a cohesive group of 3. You see it a lot in the film, actually, on a lot of the close-ups of the battle. You really get this sense of them moving from side to side as they protect the person directly behind them.
The elves' fighting style is almost the equivalent of some form of choreography or dance. They are very swift and very lethal to move through a battlefield like dancers through a crowd.
The elves have always had a slightly Eastern sort of martial arts kind of fighting style.
Karate elf.
There's a particular way that the elves fight. They fight kind of like samurai, mixture between samurai warriors and Greek warriors.
Needed to be a unique fighting style that had some of the qualities of Eastern martial arts in terms of the fluidity of it, but wasn't recognizable.
Holy shit. That was very cool, guys. These guys are good.